Hi and welcome to Inside View. I'm your host, Joel Metzger, and joining me on the show tonight is Merita Callaway, who is a longtime supervisor of Calaveras County and is joining us to talk about her time in the county and all kinds of things tonight. Well, we're in for a treat, I think, this evening.
We're in for a treat, and I'm glad to see you without a jacket.
I don't have a jacket on tonight. I also don't have my top button buttoned, which is completely because of you. You came in and encouraged me to loosen up a little bit, if I recall, several years back.
Have you?
I think so. I think so. I think I've gotten a little more comfortable in the chair with all these bright lights shining on me and all of that. And you must have been on this show at least, I mean with me at least 5 or 6, 7 times.
Yes. So what we used to do, bringing up history, is the Board of Supervisors would come here before a board meeting and we'd be like in on a table, all of us, and would be Q&A. And we would be filmed, and then they would show it on community TV or wherever they showed it. And then Ed Lark comes, and Ed Lark tries to move this place, community TV, into the 21st century. I mean, he just nags the board for money all the time at budget. But now we have these interviews. And now we film the Board of Supervisors meetings, or the studio does, and shows them on community TV and on YouTube or wherever else you show it. And I mean, it's exciting to see. That's one of the things that has changed over the years.
And it's all due to Mr. Ed Lark, who just shook things up. Huh?
Oh, he did. Very much so.
Yeah. So I didn't know that. So you all would sit there kind of as a panel
Yes.
and like discuss the upcoming meeting in a way?
And we'd discuss the upcoming meeting or whatever questions were asked, what was on the board agenda.
Okay.
And we did that for a while. That was when Tommy Taylor was on the board.
Okay. Okay. Wow. Now, how many years did you serve as supervisor?
21.
21 years. So, I mean, over that time, you must have seen so many changes. I mean, so many things evolved,
Yes.
and some things probably for the good, maybe some things for the bad. But what are some...
I'll never say for the bad.
Never for the bad.
Ever, never.
Okay.
Yes, there has been a lot of changes. Every board, whether it's a homeowners board or a school board or a board of supervisors, city has its own personality. So as the members change, the personality of a board changes. The nice thing about being a county supervisor, it's nonpartisan. At least it should be nonpartisan. Because you don't run based on the Democrats or Republicans or Libertarians. I have to say that because of Tom Tryon supporting you. You run because in the state of California, county supervisors are nonpartisan. So let me just talk about maybe some of the things I've seen besides the changes in community TV. We have a code enforcement. We have a vehicle abatement program now. We have minutes that we used to get huge packets with correspondence. We now, not we, the board, now gets it on an iPad, so they use an iPad. We have a Public Records Act that, you know, the people can request information. We used to have administrative meetings with the CAO, the chair, and the vice chair. Well, one of the things Tom Tryon taught me is we're a board, and items of concern have to come to the board, not to an individual supervisor doing something. So that was a hard lesson because I had been a manager, and when I said, I want you here or I want you there, that happened. Well, now I needed 3 votes to make it happen. So that was a learning process. I worked hard to get a supervisor's fund so supervisors could have money to spend within their respective districts. We had it for a while, and then times got tough, and then I said, well, we can't have it anymore. The courts used to be part of the county. They're now part of the state. The meetings used to be on Monday. And they were on Monday because the Calaveras Enterprise, I think you're familiar with Calaveras Enterprise?
I think I have some
Yes,
familiarity.
they came out on Tuesday. So to report on board activities, we had to meet on Monday. Well, we were the only county left in the state of California that met on Monday. And when Bill Claudino was on the board, he said, we need to move to Tuesdays. So we moved to Tuesdays, sort of kicking and screaming, but we moved to Tuesdays, and that's another bit of history since during my tenure on the board.
I can't believe you let that happen, Merita. That really does kind of cramp our style at the Enterprise.
Yeah, well, sometimes I think I voted no.
Oh, good.
And it was to support Tom Tryon. And I did that one other time at the Murphy's Hotel. The prior Dorian wanted to put up a neon sign. Very controversial. Well, Tom was concerned that that would change the ambiance in Murphy's. And so it was a 3-2 vote. I thought, well, I need to support Tom on that. Well, then Dorian had the light kickoff, so I went to the kickoff for the neon sign at the Murphy's Hotel. But Tom, taught me, besides that we're a board, and you have to operate as a board, he also taught me that once you do an ordinance, it's the law for the county. And you can't waive the law. You can change it, but you can't waive it. So you have to be very careful when you vote for an ordinance, that this is what you think is best for the interests of the county, people in the county.
And I think that's an interesting point, is you represented District 3, and yet many of your votes affected the county as a whole. And so you had to think beyond your borders in almost everything you did.
Especially on land use issues. When Oak Canyon came.
Where is Oak Canyon?
Oak Canyon's down in Copperopolis.
Okay.
Oh, it's a huge project, 500 and some parcels and so forth. It was a 4-to-1 vote. I was the one vote that didn't support it because of things that the environmental impact report said and other issues, doesn't matter. And here there were a room full of people that I knew, friends with many of them, and I had to vote no, and I had to explain why. But those are things like what Tommy Taylor and Tom Tryon had taught me, was that when you take a vote, you explain to the public and to your colleagues why you're taking that vote. Because after a year, people should know pretty much how you're going to vote. Marita's going to vote this way on an issue, or Tom, or now Cliff, or Debbie. This is how people expect you to vote. And probably 85% of the time, 90% of the time, you're on target. So those are some of the things that occur. And we've had other controversy. Were you going to ask me about controversial issues?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't shy away from it if you want to talk about them.
Yeah, I'll talk about some.
Okay.
I was trying to think of someone. We were discussing my doing this. Some that were sort of off. I mean, Trinitas. Everybody knows about Trinitas.
Goodness. Well, maybe they don't. Who knows?
And the general plan. I mean, those are in the controversy for the general plan still to come. But we had the red-legged frog was a controversial. Timber harvest plans when Sierra Pacific Industry bought the property and they started doing clear cutting. That was a very controversial issue. Jake breaks going up and down pretty much in Highway 4. They made too much noise when the logging trucks went through subdivisions or down Highway 4. It might have been an issue just for the constituents in District 3, but it was a controversial issue.
What happened with that one?
I would ask, I'd call SPI and ask them to please talk to their loggers about not using the Jake brakes when they were going through residential areas. And they were very cooperative. They did that. Driveways were an issue. CAL FIRE said driveways couldn't be over a certain grade if you're steep, and we had drama about driveway grades because most of the parcels in the Ebbets Pass area are steep.
Right.
So how do you develop the property, which, you know, we resolved that issue. Roads is also one. We had a program where people could, and this was a constituent who said, I don't want to drive to Red Hill to dump my yard waste. I think we need a place in Ebbets Pass. And I thought, well, that's a good idea. So we had a program in Ebbets Pass at Miller's in Avery, and Raleigh's up at Camp Connell in Dorrington area, where people could dump their yard waste. The program was so successful, we had to stop it because we couldn't afford it.
Because you had to haul it all down to...
No, you used recycle money out of the $150 that you pay in your property tax, of which $10 goes for recycle. We didn't, in the county, we don't even collect that money. The first year at just Raleigh and Miller's, we spent just those two sites over $100,000. 5 years later, 4 or 5 years later, we're spending $500,000.
Wow.
We didn't collect that $500,000, so it was a program we had to stop. And I'm sad we had to. Gene Miller told me we shouldn't have done it in the first place, but oh no, the community wants it. And, I mean, it's a shame we couldn't have kept it up. But anyway, so Red-Legged Frog was an interesting one. It stopped a project on Gillum Road. And
so basically, if this frog is found to be living in a certain habitat that might be impacted by some sort of a development project?
In this case, it was road.
It was road, okay.
It was, we needed to do maintenance on the road, and the material from the road would go into the creek, and the creek housed the red-legged frog, and so on. So there's always something controversial going on, whether it's in a district or the county, and
then you have like the people on the one side saying, let's run those frogs over and let's cover up their habitat. I don't care. The road's more important. And on the other side, you have, you know,
that's correct.
The frog is absolutely the most important thing. And if we need to take the road out completely to preserve this frog's habitat, then that's what I think we should do.
Oh, isn't that nice that you said that? We also had that about the yellow frog, too.
The yellow frog, okay.
Yeah, we couldn't plant. And your father was on Fish and Game Commission with me, or I was on with him. And the yellow frog habitat is up in pretty much in the upper Sierra Nevadas, up in the mountains. And the Fish and Game Commission, Fish and Wildlife now wouldn't let us plant if there was yellow-legged frog or whatever the frog is.
Would the fish eat the frog eggs or the frogs themselves?
Yeah, the fish would eat the frogs.
Okay.
And talking about your father, memory, your dad used to, for those of you who don't know, Joel's dad used to be our assessor. And he used to lobby me to want to have an assessment appeals board. He said, because supervisors just do supervisor things when they sit as the Board of Equalization, and you have to obey the Revenue and Taxation Code. Right, Randy? I'll do that. So I went to Revenue and Taxation Code school so I could be what it is your dad thought we should be. Well, fast forward, and the market changed, and there was a lot of cases that were coming to the board, and we couldn't manage them correctly. So we did set up a board for assessment appeals board. And so I don't know if your father's happy about that or not, but you can ask him.
Are you saying that he was right about the assessment appeals board? Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, yes.
I will pass that on. That's good stuff.
He was.
Okay. Okay.
He was right, but he lobbied, and he had very good reasons for it. So that's how things change.
So how was it working with strong-minded people like my father?
It was fine.
Fine.
I like it.
Okay.
I liked it because they were open. They talked about things. They gave reasons why they wanted things done. They were not embarrassed to say things or reluctant to say things to the board in public or in a one-on-one basis. And I think it's important that staff, and in your dad's case, he was elected, so the board has no control over electeds except their budget.
Right.
Yeah, well, I
Right.
used to threaten him, but he didn't care. I'd threaten all the electeds, but they didn't care. So there's a difference. But whether it's an elected or an appointed department head or a staff member, they need to feel comfortable saying to the board what needs to be said from their professional experience. And then the board makes whatever decision they want to make, and you move on.
What is it like working with 4 other people who you had no control over them being there with you, and they might have no experience or a huge amount of experience, and trying to make that work? I mean, how was that for you over the years?
That's a good question. It depended on the board. For the most part, it was issue-oriented. We used to go to lunch together. This current board went to a Brown Act school, and they decided we shouldn't do that. I think something's lost in not doing that, because you set up a rapport with your board members. But the work of the county has to be done in public, as it should be, and the issues need to be and the discussion needs to be issue-driven, not personal. And I have to say the culture of the board in Calaveras is generally issue-driven, not personal. I mean, yeah, there are board members that I didn't particularly care about, but I would sometimes get their vote on issues, or they'd sometimes get mine. So, yeah, it was always a challenge. And I remember Tommy Taylor saying, I would ask a lot of questions. I'd read my board packet, and staff would get up and ask all these questions, and Tommy said, "Mr. Chair, can we take the vote? She's just going on way too long." And I realized, and what Tommy taught me is, if you have all these questions, talk to staff ahead of time, which as of the whole tenure I was on the board, I would always ask staff my questions ahead of time. I want them to look good. I want answers. And if they look good, then the board looked good. So, I mean, I just thought it was a good way to do business. For me, that worked.
So at one point, you were the rookie coming in there without much experience.
Yes.
Who would you say you kind of learned the most from, or what group of people did you learn the most from?
Probably Tommy Taylor and Tom Tryon.
Were they both on the board?
They were both on the board.
Okay. And were you, I mean, did you find that they were, good friends, or were they more professional people who taught you through their leadership?
Probably a little bit of both.
Okay.
I mean, I think everybody knows Tom Tryon and I are diametrically opposed on a lot of things.
You are, really?
Yeah. Yeah. And we are, even to this day.
Yes.
But it was always issue-driven. And I learned things from Tom, as I learned things from Tommy Taylor. And, I learned things from other board members. I remember we took one of the electeds on when Terry Bailey was on the board. And you have to take an elected on, you have to do it in public, or you can do it in private, but the grand jury has to be there. Grand jury. Oh, I'm meeting with the grand jury this week.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know what about. Doesn't matter. They asked to talk with me. Okay. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So, yeah, Terry, we took the sheriff on. We took Sheriff Dunham on.
Okay.
And you had to do it in public. And Terry came prepared. She had her notebook. And I thought, whoa, if you're going to take elected on, you better make sure you have your facts correct. It was, and we have taken on another elected. It's not comfortable doing that, but if that's what you have to do, that's what you have to do. You try and deal with the issues outside the boardroom, and if you can't, then you bring it to the board. So.
Not always the easiest or most comfortable situations to be in, though, especially in front of everyone. I mean, behind closed doors is one thing, but doing that...
Well, taking on an elected, it would be a one-on-one thing. I mean, if I had issues with an elected, I would talk with that elected one-on-one. And if it just became too much, you just deal with it in a public arena. I mean, that was the hardest thing for me to learn, is everything's public. So my first year on the board was learning that everything you do is public. It's public, and I like that process. I like the fact things are open to the public. You don't have to do things. I mean, there are things that I would do as a supervisor in a district that just related to my district, that didn't impact the board. But for the most part, you have to deal as a board with the issues that come up. Anything of policy nature. I mean, calling animal services and asking them to take care of a dog complaint or a code enforcement complaint to help your constituents, one thing. But establishing a policy for code enforcement or animal services is a board issue.
Right. Looking back over 21 years, what are some things that you just really take pride in that you've seen happen?
For me, the biggest challenge I had was dealing with constituent issues one-on-one. The other things I learned is that I felt like I made good decisions. They were well-informed decisions. Mm-hmm. I read everything that came to us.
And I wonder about that.
Oh, yes.
Because, I mean, we're talking serious stacks of paper.
Some of the hard ones were the environmental impact reports. Land use issues are very significant to the county. Mm-hmm. They're very significant to the developer, to the neighbors. So it's important. I think you don't do justice to anyone if you don't come prepared. Mm-hmm. And yeah, and some of them, like Trinitas, I mean, I don't even want to think how many hours I spent on that, and how many public meetings we had. But that was a significant case. I mean, that's a case, a land use case that should go before a law class and a land use class. It had anything and everything. Oh, the other thing I learned a lot about was agriculture.
Well, that's a big part of this county.
A big part. So that's a dilemma the county's in. We say we're an ag county. Well, if we're an ag county, what are we doing to support agriculture? Well, so a developer comes in and wants to do parcel splits or subdivisions, and you take up ag land. So should you be doing that if you're trying to support ag? And then I had a rancher educate me, one of my mentors on ag, and say, Merita, if you want to enjoy my open space, which is thousands of acres, for me to stay in ag, I might need to develop a small portion of my land in a subdivision or clustered housing. Excuse me. So you need to let me do that. So that gave me another perspective. Mm-hmm. I know people say, well, it's expensive to develop. Somebody has to pay for road improvements, for infrastructure. Going to general plan meetings and community meetings all over the county, which I did. The common denominators, we want to stay rural, and how that's decided in each community is different, and we need infrastructure. So those were the common denominators. And
do those almost contradict one another? Or is it maintaining an existing infrastructure?
Well, an infrastructure is sewer, water, roads, broadband, mm-hmm. as we're moving more and more into the 21st century. And Ed Lark nags more and more, you know, we need broadband. It's become like a telephone or wireless. Mm-hmm. I remember years ago people would say, oh, we can't get cell service. There's no cell service up and down Highway 4. There's one little spot on Highway 4, one little spot at Bear Valley. Well, now you can go up and down Highway 4 and for the most part get cell service.
It's amazing. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and a lot of people have dropped their hardline phones for cell phones. Mm-hmm.
So what are some things that you just had just a wonderful time doing? What was fun about you know, the last 21 years?
I have to say, pretty much every meeting was fun. Mm-hmm. The public comment period, you never knew what was going to happen.
Isn't that the truth?
That was always fun. And sometimes, I mean, you have the season ticket holders, and it's interesting to hear what they have to say, but some people come up and they talk about things and you don't know about it, or they have concerns, or you realize they're frustrated. So I don't know if you'd say fun, but the fun part was having somebody have an issue that you can help them with, or not, like your in-laws. You know, I mean, we'd like to help them, and it just didn't work out. And you have to have the courage to look people in the eye, whether it's one-on-one or a room full of people, and say no if they want you to say yes, or vice versa. So I enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the staff. They were quite a team for me. I mean, we really worked well as a team. There isn't a department that I could say didn't work with me on helping constituent issues. We have a new jail now, we have a new sheriff's office, we have a new courthouse. You know, hopefully we'll have a new animal shelter. I mean, the county's moving. I mean, it seems to be plodding along, and democracy doesn't work fast. You know, if democracy worked fast, it wouldn't be a democracy. So, and I think the board meetings are open. I mean, they're filmed. The public has access to the minutes and all the documentation that the board does. I think all those are positive things. And, you know, I really wish the county well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I'm going to miss some things. I'll miss my association with the agencies that I represented the county on at the state level, and some of the Area 12 agency and child support and so forth. But, you know, they're all in good hands, and they'll move forward. And, yeah, so I'm moving on to new adventures, and maybe get organized, maybe not.
We'll see, but that's all the adventure. You
have
options, anything you want to do ahead.
Yeah. And I would like to see the county put a legislative platform together, because bills come in on the state and federal level, and it moves quickly, and sometimes you just don't have time to bring an item to the board. So I used to write letters on support of federal or state issues that I was pretty sure the board would support, and I would copy the board. And department heads could also do that if there's a legislative platform. But you know what? That's their job now.
Right. Well, Merita, I personally want to thank you on behalf of everyone in the county for your years of dedication. You have really done good in this county, and we were very lucky and fortunate to have you. So thank you for all you've done.
Thank you, Joel.
And thank you for joining me to kind of say farewell.
Oh, that's awesome.
And yet hello at the same time with new adventures.
Well, you have a new adventure. You have a new job.
I do.
I see your name in the paper more often than I see the Board of Supervisors' names.
I'll take the heat. I'll take the heat. But thank you again, and thanks for joining me. And thank you for joining me on this edition of Inside View. I'm your host, Joel Metzger, and I hope that you join me next time.